head of macro strategy, Peter Tchir. I mean, Peter, how should we be viewing this? This is a market that is incredibly difficult to trade, and it's only 9:07 a.m. in New York right now.
It has been pretty crazy, and we're in the process of taking off some hedges. The headline came out, and I think you probably want to fade this a little bit. So when I'm looking at this, and I get to work with the generals and admirals, I think two things that are still left on the table is we have the Marine Expeditionary Force coming, right? So 5 more days gives time for the Marine Expeditionary Force to either get closer or get in the region, be set up, and provide additional leverage. And we believe that we want to do more attacks on the Iranian coast to basically destroy their ability to attack into the Strait of Hormuz. Right now, they kind of hide in caves. They come out, they shoot their missiles, they disappear, and that's going to take some time. So I suspect for the next 5 days, we will continue to try and degrade their defenses. Israel might do the same. So I think we're a long way from being able to say, hey, the Strait might be open or that Iran agrees to anything. So I think this is a little bit back to where we were Friday night.
But are you saying that, this morning's tweet appears to indicate that President Trump is backing off. He's de-escalating a little bit. But are you saying maybe he's just buying time to get more boots on the Gulf, maybe to potentially take over Karg Island?
Yeah, I think we will see in the next 24 hours. If we continue to hit their military targets, it'll meet what he said in his social truth, right? Because he just talked about the ultimatum and going after their power plants and energy infrastructure, right? That was all relatively new on Saturday night with the ultimatum. It has not backed off the overall military strategy as far as I can tell. So I suspect we continue with that military strategy, which Iran has to counter.
He said on Fox Business, I guess he was talking to Maria Bartiromo this morning, that we may see a deal by the end of the week. But I'll remind everybody that on March 6th, President Trump tweeted, there will be no deal with Iran except unconditional surrender. Does that, do you think, hold? Does the president really push for an unconditional surrender here?
I think that's really difficult, right? Iran still so far has demonstrated their ability to, keep, ships from going into the Strait. So I think we need to either really prove that we can allow ships to transit the Strait or do something slightly more aggressive. All of that, I think this is the problem, is we're in this race against time where the things that we need to do, which we will ultimately probably be successful in, just take some time. And the pressure on oil markets and all the downstream products is coming back. And that's kind of, that's why I'm more that this is a delay. Let this play out, because unlike other things like Liberation Day, for example, you could back off and it's A-OK because we kind of initiated and there was no direct response. I think here, how do you leave the region in a state where Iran is degraded to the point that they don't have the ability to reclose the minute our troops leave, that they don't have the ability to punish their citizens who they choose to punish the minute we leave. So I think this one's a little bit harder to just say we got victory and leave. I think that's going to be the tricky part, and almost why I think this has to just be creating room for a more push to really force the Iranian regime into accepting that, hey, the loss is inevitable. Stop now before you hurt your own people more.
Peter, there's a couple of options for what took place this morning and this weekend, too. It's something J.P. Morgan has pointed out, too, that on one side, maybe Donald Trump isn't telling the entirety of the truth, which would not be a great thing. On the other side, perhaps talks did take place and the Iranian media organizations aren't fully aware. But in this back and forth, doesn't also represent this idea that perhaps there are multiple factions in Iran, that maybe talks are taking place in some capacity, but then there are others trying to exert control. Doesn't this show just how messy this situation is and how far away we are from any sort of resolution?
Yeah, so 2 things. One, I do want to start. One of our generals has often pointed out that Iran has actually never won a war, but they've never lost a negotiation. So they are great at trying to keep things on the negotiating table while they prepare for more war and to deflect. So, they might also be playing games here as well. So I wouldn't just say that it's our side maybe playing some games. And having said that, I think as we look at that, that's one of the risks that we see is Iran fracturing into a bunch of independent groups, each with their own set of military equipment, each with their own agenda. And that's really hard, right? If you have 7, 8 different factions, each kind of doing their own thing, all deciding to say, keep fighting with the U.S., maybe while some other group says they don't want to. I think that's really the hard part. We did such a good job, I guess, in terms of decapitating the regime. It's unclear who's there. But I have to say this, right? If you look at the IRGC, they have had intermarriages. So they're they're very closely connected from a family side. They are very wealthy, they're very motive, and they do have a bit of a decentralized command. So this could continue. So again, it makes it really hard. Who did we make peace with, and will that peace even hold?
All right,
If
Peter,
we get to that piece. Sorry about that.
Peter,
I was jumping the gun there.
No, Peter, we're gonna keep you on with us because you are Academy Securities is so stocked with experience and wisdom. We want to hear more from Peter Tchir of Academy on this program.
Still with us is Academy Securities head of macro strategy, Peter Tchir, and Peter, Mark, kind of confirming a lot of what you've been saying. I just wonder after this, if you can do anything but just shrink your books and get as close to the ground as you possibly can right now. Or are there moments, are there parts of this market that you can't trade in?
I think right now, if I've had to pick where I want to choose, I want to be long, actually, treasuries now. I think we kind of hit this point and maybe want to see if we fade a little bit from here. I think we are either going to get higher oil prices, which at some point are going to scare the global economy enough that we rally on treasuries. So I like 10s and beyond because I think recession risk starts coming into play, or we're going to get this little pause where rates can rally. So I like that. I'm also trying to figure out, what's the way to invest in European defense. I'm trying to figure out who in Europe's going to make drones. If I look at Europe trying to, make their own military at some point, it's not going to happen anytime soon with, aircraft carriers or tanks or jets. But I think maybe they can do something in the drone space. So what's the opportunity there, right? How does Europe maybe build up a defense force around drones? Same time, how do we build that up? So I think there's opportunities. And I do think global energy production is still going to be a key, right? We are going to sell off and bounce around. But I think the reality is Europe in particular is going to wake up and say, it is insane that we ignore the North Sea, that we ignore so many of our own energy resources, that we don't refine and process enough of ours. I think Canada's got some of these same issues. So I think you're going to see this real global push to be much more independent and almost vertically integrated in nations. So each nation has to be a little bit more vertically integrated. So I think anything, oil field services, those companies will still do well. Maybe you want to fade it a little bit while oil comes off, but this is a multi-year play, and I think you got to look to nuclear. All these things that we were kind of looking at one point as the data center AI trade, I think are going to be this electricity independence trade. So those are where I kind of want to add my money as you get these opportunities.
Does this, you've been consistent in this ProSec trade, Peter, for months now. Does it continue even if the U.S. backs out of Iran, if we find some solution, some magical solution that reopens the Strait of Hormuz and gives us a regime in Iran that we, and maybe more importantly, Israel, can accept? Or do you think that we're in some kind of forever war or wars as long as President Trump is in the White House?
So I think we were in this kind of steady state, let's call it a world order, where if anyone was kind of affecting, a rules-based order, it was China, right? China was pushing the envelope everywhere on that rules-based order. I think we are moving to a system, production for security and resilience, or ProSec, where every country's a little bit more independent. And I think, like in chemistry, you go from one steady state to another steady state. There's often some volatility and violence in between. And I think that's what we're going to see, these periods of uncertainty, volatility. And I think the takeaway is countries that figure this out are going to say, hey, okay, we escaped a narrow one if we get the strait reopened. How do we make sure that in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years down the road, we're not in that same state? And some countries will do something about it, and some will wow, this is all okay. Let's go back to business as usual. So I think you're going to see real push on this. You're seeing Europe even start maybe to fracture along the lines, Germany and France. I think France was always slightly more independent, saying we need to do these things. So I think that's where the investment opportunity is. Look at what's going to get looked through this. And yeah, maybe oil will go down for a while. I still think you want energy independence. You want control of your data centers. You want to make your own chips, right? It's a little bit scary that people are talking about helium and whether Taiwan has enough helium to make chips. These things all have to be better managed.
Peter, great to get your take. Really appreciate you jumping on with us at short notice this morning. Peter Tchir is the head of macro strategy at Academy Securities.